if I'm going to give people a sales pitch on SpecKit, I'm going to say like, hey, as a tooling, one of the things it's really good at is it's really good at surfacing the ambiguity. Welcome everybody to another episodes of the How Many CTOs Does It Take podcast. My name is Brad Hefta-Gaub, and my trusty co-host is
Scott Porad. What's up, Brad?
Scott, my friend. How many CTOs does it take to get product owners to actually care about spec-driven development?
Oh, snap. So, what everybody needs to know who's listening today is that Brad and I are doing this podcast raw dog. We have not discussed in
Hot dog again.
advance what
Commando
we were going
style.
that sometimes we're just like, let's just go for it and see what happens. And Brad's like, I got a topic, Scott, I'll just get us going. Okay, well, I don't know the answer to that question, but I just want to read you a text message that I had with one of the engineers in my life that
Wait, are you
I
saying this? Are you saying this is hitting?
it's hitting.
All right.
Let's see here. What this having a text exchange with a engineer who I've worked with for 25 years, 20 years, think highly of him. We were texting last night about AI and blah blah SDD and all this nonsense. And he sent this to me. A product has always been the hardest part of software. Product has just been able to hide behind a long dev cycle. And now that the dev cycle is collapsing, product is just what's left.
Yep.
And I thought that was very astute.
Yeah, it
And
is.
it's interesting because I was talking just, I don't know, this week to some product managers, and I was just trying to get product managers to sit down with engineers to do spec-driven development, to use SpecKit, because it's really a product management tool.
Yeah, it is.
No, you need the partnership. We need our product managers to realize that SpecKit or spec-driven development is a product management tool, not an engineering tool.
Well, okay, so first of all, that's landing for me. Sure. I actually so let me tell you why I thought I wanted to bring this topic. Okay? So first of all, you know that I work with a handful of different teams, and I've got several of them that are really really accelerating their development because of AI. And they're just like
Mhm.
crushing it. And so your comment that like, you know, like the speed with which we can build software is just collapsing, right?
Mhm.
It's like we're building software so fast. Partly inspired by you, I was like, okay, let's really interrogate SpecKit. Like, because
Mhm.
a couple of the teams I work with, they're not using anything like that. They're going really fast. Their product owners are in love with the product progress they're making. They're all plan mode. They're definitely like doing all the things that I say is the right way to do to get like still high quality engineering best practices. They've got clean, quality gates. They've got, great CI/CD. They've got really good, real user monitoring and like telemetry and all the stuff that we think of as like real, quality engineering. We're not just like vibe coding this shit,
Mhm.
right? So was floating with them like, hey, why don't we try to use SpecKit here? And one of those teams has a product owner that is on the cutting edge of like using AI agents to just build software for them. And the team's got enough like quality gates and infrastructure around them that they're like, yeah, sure, go for it. Like you got an idea, fire up the agent, make it build something, and it's okay. It's nothing's going to get through our quality gates, so we're fine with that, with you kind of running with this. So I was like, hey, why don't you try using SpecKit? Like I think like they would hand me some stuff every once in a while, and I'd look at it and I'd go like, oh, there's some ambiguity in your request here, and I bet you, and like they would sometimes come to me and be like, yeah, my agent's really struggling with this one. I was went back around and around in circles, and I was like, well, yeah, that's because this particular task has got a little bit of ambiguity to it. And I think if you give it to one of your engineers, they'll instinctually know how to get around that ambiguity. But if you really want to do this, then you need to have a more structured spec and try SpecKit. It's going to be a way to get you that. Okay? Sounds like a
Mhm.
plausible like response, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And the reaction was, "Oh man, it wrote so many words. I didn't want to like have to read through all that."
Mhm. Interesting.
And I was like, "What do you mean it wrote so many words? It gave you like five, six, a dozen user stories. Like that's what you should have been doing anyway."
Mhm.
And it was like, nah, I just feel like I can go faster if I don't have to give it all that, if I don't have to read all those words.
Yeah. I It's funny, this is so germane to a conversation literally I had 30 minutes ago.
So the stars are aligning.
We have a repo for one of our systems that has excellent test coverage. 100% units test coverage, 500 acceptance tests, very, very good test coverage. And one of our most experienced engineers using SpecKit submitted a 60,000 line pull request.
Nice. I love it.
And I was saying to the kind of this, not to the engineer, but to this other person, I was like, I don't really know how I feel about a 60,000 line pull request. That's going against my training and experience. And he said to me, well, this is how you have to think about it. So I'm sorry, take a step back really quickly. We write in Python, or I'm sorry, not in Python, in TypeScript. Imagine if instead of committing your TypeScript to the repo, you committed your assembly code to the repo.
Right.
And you could, no, not instead of, in addition to the TypeScript, you committed the assembly code.
Hmm.
You wouldn't review the assembly code, which would be thousands and thousands of lines. You would just review the TypeScript.
Yeah.
And the spec for this thing, it was a little long. It was about 1,000 lines long, a little, I think it was 1,100 lines long, but that included the user stories, the plan, all of it. And the point was you review the spec, not the code. And that's how, if you have the right quality gates in place, that's how you use this and can and be comfortable accepting a 60,000 line pull request. And then that led into another subsequent conversation about some observations we've made in our organization of when people use SpecKit, just kind of accepting the defaults of what it produces. Because this person in our, or the same person I was talking to was pointing to something that somebody else did. And this other particular person was frustrated because SpecKit used Bash to create something, not whatever he wanted it to do, Python or TypeScript or something. And the person I was talking to said, I went and looked at the spec, and the spec says, I'm going to write this in Bash. Like you asked, you gave the agent a bunch of stuff. It gave you a plan, which says, this is what I'm going to do. He's like, I think this person didn't quite understand that their job was to review this plan, was to read this,
Read the spec and read the plan.
read it really carefully. And that led to a subsequent conversation. All these parts are tying together so in ways I hadn't really understood before. We had a conversation. Okay, well, let me interrupt myself. I'll tell you about the conversation I had with my team earlier this week, but I'll just skip to the end of it. There's this aspect of software engineering that's changing. You're kind of going from a coder to a reviewer. And it's like, it's a different muscle.
Hmm.
And for a lot of us, it might, like the coding muscle was a really fun muscle. Look, I can type, I can do this sorcery and a magical thing happens.
Right.
And the reviewing muscle is maybe like different. It's like a book author versus a book editor. Right? Those are different skills
Yeah.
and different people gravitate towards them. And some are good at one or some are good at the other, but they're different. And kind of in some ways, the job is changing.
Yeah.
And I bring that up. I want to mention this one meeting we had this week, this one
Yeah.
discussion we have. Every week at my company, we have an engineering roundtable where anybody from product or engineering can come and we discuss anything anybody wants to discuss. This started out as like an office hours with the CTO, but then it was just people asking me questions. It felt very much like I was on a pedestal, and I didn't really want that. So I was like, no,
Right.
let's just have conversations about stuff. Who wants to talk about what? And lots of times, nobody wants to talk about anything. They want to see the other stuff people want to talk about. And this week, nobody had anything. And I often keep a few questions in my back pocket just to get a conversation going. And I asked the question this week. I said, if with all these AI tools, everybody can code now, why don't we just let anybody in this whole company submit pull requests? Why is it only engineers that are allowed to submit pull requests? And there's a lot of resistance and a lot of questions, but there was support also. There were a lot of concerns. But one of them was about like, well, we'll just be overloaded with code reviews.
Yeah. Right.
So back to the original question, how do we get product owners to care?
Yeah. Well, and so first of all, everything you just said 100% resonates with me. And I think that that is 100% like this is like squarely in the drop zone of the question I'm asking, right?
Mhm.
I want to introduce a couple other things to this conversation to see if they also resonate with you.
Mhm.
So, first of all, you made the point that like the developer job becomes like really reading the spec and the plan and really
Mhm.
interrogating that. So
Mhm.
that's great. Here's what I'm saying. I have some product owners I work with, and and as I think about this, this is not new. This is actually how a lot of the product owners I've worked with for my entire career. They my current product owners, they are kind of like, look, I don't really know what I want. Don't make me describe exactly what I want. Like this is kind of what I want. I can kind of tell you what I want, but I won't know if I really want it until you build it and let me play with it. And so that flies in the face of spec-driven development. Or at least I'm going to say SpecKit. I think spec-driven development is a broad, sort of like broad terminology, right? And I think that some of the people I'm working with, they're like, oh yeah, I was always giving you specs and you guys were always building against those specs. SpecKit produces some very detailed specs.
Mhm.
And so maybe this is less of a comment on spec-driven development and more of a comment on SpecKit. And
Mhm.
what the reaction I'm seeing is product owners who are like, they don't want to read the spec either. They sure as shit don't want to write it, but they don't even want to read it.
Okay, I got so many thoughts. It's just like it's all in the zeitgeist. It's like we're living on the edge of those zeitgeist right now. It's so
Right.
crazy. And we're not even, I mean, the only reason I would have an interest in going to work at a company like Anthropic right now is just to really get to be on the edge. I mean, it's just like it's changing so fast.
Yeah.
I think I posted on LinkedIn a while ago. It's a good thing technology isn't changing fast right now. Otherwise, we couldn't keep up. I mean, it's just it's moving so fast. Okay, so an engineering manager on our team this week in that same conversation we had made this comment. She said, "You know, Scott, the most of the time isn't spent coding. Most of the time is spent having a back and forth conversation with whoever is requesting the work to clarify exactly what they want."
Yeah.
And but that's not happening like in one meeting where you sit down. Like the engineer starts coding away and is like, "Oh, I wonder if they want me to have a limit on this thing, or if we could just, if I need to design it to be unlimited, or something like that, right?" And so then they send a Slack message over to the PM like, "Hey, do you think there might be a limit to this? Like, should we cap
Right.
it or should we make it unlimited? Like, what do you think we should?" There's that back and forth. And so it feels lighter weight. And when you try and specify it all up front, it starts to feel pretty heavyweight.
Well, and the good news is that, again, as a tool, SpecKit will ask you a bunch of questions, right? And
Hmm.
we'll kind of like make a bunch of assumptions, describe stuff, and then kind of say, hey, is this what you wanted? Right.
Hmm.
And there even, of course, SpecKit even has this like mode where you like after you specify, then you can run clarify, and clarify will basically kind of go look at the code, look at your spec, and then further come up with like
Hmm.
ambiguity and say like, hey, you didn't give us an answer on this and this and this. And as a case in point, one this product owner that I've been working with, where I was like, hey, why don't you try to use SpecKit on this? And he was a little reluctant, so I was like, hey, how about this? I'm gonna take the next card. I'll go ahead and run SpecKit on this thing, and I'll see what it does, and I'll show it to you. And this was like something that when SpecKit got a hold of it, SpecKit did a great job of writing the spec and came up with some very, very real questions that were underspecified and said, well, you
Hmm.
didn't say anything about this. You didn't say anything about this. You didn't say anything about this. So I went back to the product owner and I said, hey, by the way, came up with a great spec and it clarified the following questions that you had not mentioned to me at all. What do you think? And the product owner was like, I don't know what I don't I didn't specify that because I didn't even think about that. Like I don't know
Hmm.
what to do about that. I don't what do
Hmm.
you suggest I do about like they were basically like completely stymied by the area of ambiguity was like they were completely oblivious to it. And so that like
Hmm.
sent them into a not a tailspin necessarily, but at least they were like dazed and confused and were like, yeah, I don't even know what to do about that, right? So
Well, first of all, I was going to say we might spend 10 hours talking about this. This is going to be a great podcast. If those five questions existed in reality, but we were unaware of them because the spec kit didn't surface them. So we're in the old world. We're in the pre times, right? What would have happened? I'm going to speculate something.
I think I know what's would have happened. Go ahead, tell me
Of
what you
the
think would have.
of those five, this is how it would have happened. One of them, the developer would have just decided on their own. Another one, the developer would have asked the product manager or whoever the requester was, the product owner. One of them would have ended up as a bug and have to get fixed later, and the remainder would have somehow gone unanswered,
And Ben tech debt.
or product debt, or maybe it just ended up not quite working the way we wanted it to, and people just accepted that, or something.
Yep.
Or maybe the software just wasn't written quite as well because it didn't consider some situation.
Yep.
That's kind of what would have happened. And now SpecKit is demanding. On the one hand, AI is an eager intern, and on the other side, it is
Yeah.
demanding boss. I'm not sure what the right word to use is. Exacting. The SpecKit is demanding that we answer these questions that before we could have kind of gotten away without answering.
Yeah, and that actually is kind of like if I'm gonna give people a sales pitch on SpecKit, I'm gonna say like, hey, as a tooling, one of the things it's really good at is it's really good at surfacing the ambiguity that otherwise your agents just because the answer is without SpecKit and you just give it a basic plan and then you say run with it, or you're totally on the other end of the spectrum vibe coding. The agent is that developer and it's just making those decisions for you, right?
That's right. I got a few other answers for it.
Okay.
I got a bunch. I mean, I've been taking note. I got lists of things to talk about now. I think your pitch on SpecKit is good. I think I'd add one other thing to it. I've always believed, and I'm not like a revolutionary in this regard, that test automation is extremely valuable.
Yeah.
And spec-driven development makes test automation both more valuable than ever and cheaper than ever to create.
Yeah.
And so overall, it's putting us in a position to create better software and move faster, better software. Like previously, test automation was expensive to make, it was time
Yeah.
consuming. And
Yep.
now it's just like lickety split. So that's another pitch I would put there. But I want to come back to your product owner thing for a second. Okay. And the product owner said, I don't know, I just want to see it and get a reaction. Now we're back to agile. Now we're back to Scrum. Now we're
Yep.
back to where the sticky note on the wall is only supposed to be enough to remind you of the conversation that you wanted to have with the product owner about what they wanted. To me, the promise of spec-driven development is that instead of having 2 week sprints, we can have 2 hour sprints, right?
Yeah.
We can be highly iterative about, okay, you only know you want these 4 user stories. Here we go. We'll just let the agent do it and we'll come back and take a look. What do you think? That's not what I wanted. All right, well, let's do another spec. Let's revise it, right? And we can get into these crazy cycles. I was just, again, I mean, this is so crazy how relevant it is. Today, 1 o'clock today, having a conversation with our engineering and product leaders about our org. And I was kind of saying, and again, I'm not the leader on this thinking, but like, I can see this world, which is not that far away, where like the ideal thing is like a team of like 3 engineers and a designer and a product manager literally sitting around the same computer and just like
Yeah.
doing it and like just getting work done because they're all right there and just iterating, like these sort of
Yeah.
strike teams. That might be the future we're headed toward. And so coming back to your product owner question, well, then they don't have to care. They don't have to throw a spec over the wall. They're sitting at the desk with the engineer and the designer. They don't have to think about the whole thing. They can just say, well, let's just start with one user story. I want a dating app, right?
Right. Right.
As a dude, I want to meet girls. I want a dating app so I can meet girls or guys or whoever I want to meet, right? So like, I don't know. I wonder if even just this is the whole other thing. I wrote this down too. The roles are all changing.
Yeah. Here's the reason I wanted to throw this topic out. I
Hmm.
wanted to throw this topic out because I think that like right now I see in the engineers that I work with the ones that are really effectively using AI, they're the ones that are even more worried about the implications of AI because they're really strong engineers and they're seeing how powerful it is. And they're kind of like, wow, like this changes everything. Okay.
Are you talking about like the Claude Mythos implications, or just like the implications to the industry or their jobs? Like, what implications are you?
To their
Okay,
jobs.
yeah, okay.
And yeah, that's what I mean. Like they're like, gosh, like it ranges from like, gosh, this turns me into just doing code reviews. I don't have to write code anymore. That's the fun part. You kind of already mentioned
Hmm.
that. To the gosh, like even novel stuff that I used to be an expert at is not that hard for this thing to do. Like it actually does
Hmm.
it as well or better than me in many cases, right? So what am I
Hmm.
left to do, right? And so what I'm saying is like I used to feel like, oh, used to like 6 months ago, I used to feel like, oh, well, if you're really worried about AI, then it's maybe because you just haven't learned how to use it and you're maybe weren't that good of a developer anyway. And so you're seeing that it's taking away, you know, boot camp style coding
Hmm.
jobs. And if you had computer science fundamentals and understood architecture, you wouldn't be as concerned about it. Fast forward 6 months, the people that have those strong computer science backgrounds, they're the ones going, man, this thing's getting pretty damn good. It's like
Hmm.
kind of going to take my job too. So that's like this backdrop. So then I think to myself, well, the thing that you're good at, senior engineer, is you're so good at teasing out the ambiguity from your product owner. Like that's actually what they value in you. It's sort of
Hmm.
what your engineering manager said to you. Like, hey, it's the writing the code's not the hard part. It's the back and forth to figure out what you want to build. It's the hard part.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay. So that first of all, I agree. I believe that. Like I believe that like being a strong engineer with a clear understanding of the business needs and understanding like how to map business needs into technical solutions, like that's fundamentally what I think is the definition of a strong engineer. But I'm having this kind of frustrated reaction to multiple product owners I work with saying things like, I can't be, I don't know, they didn't say I can't be bothered, but gosh, you're asking me too many questions. I don't know what I want. Right? Like, so to me, that's like, wow, man. Like, I think you said it really well. Like, it used to be that product owners could be wishy-washy, could be like, I don't really know what I want. Here's some ideas. And it would take the engineers long enough to develop the implementation that
Hmm.
by the time the implementation was ready to be criticized, the product owner would have, grown their thinking about it, and they would have been kind of to the point, well, now I kind of know what I want. Now I can critique what you've given me based on what I want,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Well, if the time it takes to build something has shrinks to zero, then it puts this massive pressure on you better fucking know what you want.
Yeah, that's right. It's crazy times, man.
It's crazy.
Yeah, so I want to come. How do you think we get the product owners to care? Like my hypothesis is we get them to pair program, sit down side by side with engineer and designer and do it together. That's how you get them to care. It's the only way that I can see of. But there might be others. And how do you think you get them to care?
I like that one. Okay, what I'm about to say, I don't think is an answer to your question. Uh, but I don't want to like avoid your question, but I'm more like I don't have an answer to that yet.
Brad's an avoider. Brad is an
I
avoider.
know I'm avoiding the answer. I'm avoiding the question. But I think that one of the other patterns that we know exist, right? Like I'm sure you've seen this many, many times in your career, right? Where product owners don't actually ask for what they want. They don't tell us the problem they want solved. They tell us the solution they want, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's such a trope, right? Like
Hmm.
that's existed forever. Got nothing to do with AI and the change there. That it's such a trope that like people come up with their little colloquialisms. Make sure you bring me the problem statement first. Like we're not going to talk
Hmm.
about any solutioning until we
Hmm.
clearly agreed on what the problem statement is.
Hmm.
And like that's it's funny that many of the product owners that I've worked with have been trained on that, right? Especially if they were ever at the Mag 7 or whatever, they get trained on this notion of like really understand the problem statement, before you
Hmm.
come with solutions. And yet they're pretty bad at it. Like
Because it's pretty
everyone
hard.
everyone I've ever worked with is bad at that. Because they
What
want to build stuff too. They want to be like, I want to just, hey, I just want to, I have this idea of what I want you to do. Please, I want you to, make a, replace the horse with an internal combustion engine. That's what I want.
what listeners of this podcast might not know is that my earlier in my career, my career roughly went like this. I spent 4 years as an engineer, 4 years as an engineering manager, 4 years as a product manager. Then I got a job leading kind of the what we would call now something like cloud infrastructure or something, but then we called it operations, and we because we had our own data center and stuff like that. And the product management, it's hard. It's really hard. I mean, this is go back to that. I mean, I didn't plan to focus this whole chat on a text message received yesterday, but product has always been the hardest part of software. That's what my friend said. And it's hard. It's hard to describe the problem sometimes.
Yeah.
And you often peel it back so many layers that it becomes a very generic problem, right? And so it's tough.
One of the things that I think the lovables and the sort of like rapid vibe coding tool sets might cause
Hmm.
is it might do more damage than good. Not just because like API keys and stuff like that are going to leak and there's going to be security problems, but it may like exacerbate the notion that as a product owner, you just you don't have to you can manifest the the implementation you imagined very quickly, and that will make you that means people will avoid the hard part of product, which is understanding the problem.
They're just doing self-design. In some previous episode, we talked about Jacob Nielsen and the 5 levels of design, and they're just doing,
Yeah,
I'm the customer, I'm going to design it for myself.
yeah.
I talked to some guy this week. He's a friend of mine I've known for a long time, and we were at a birthday party for a different friend of ours, and I saw him and hadn't seen him in a while. He's in real estate. He raises he's a we got a real estate investment fund kind of thing. And he told me he's been super fired up about AI, and he told me he used Lovable or Claude or something to make like a tool for tracking the progress on like raising money and all those kinds of things. And I just kind of thought to myself, like, you made a CRM system? Like, why did you do that? You know?
And what did he say?
Well, I didn't say it. I mean, I was, he was being enthusiastic and telling me about what he was doing, and I was, just being supportive. I wasn't going to insult his having fun, but I just thought to myself, I was like, why would you make? I mean, so now every little investment fund is going to make their own CRM system? I didn't want to like rain on his. I didn't want to rain on his parade. I was just like, that's cool, man. I'm glad you're having fun with it. You know,
Well, I think there's a
Me-
very real there. I mean, the stock market thinks that every little customer is going to stop using SaaS and start building their own. I mean, Workday's down like I mean, you look at these things like a bunch of these companies are down like 60, 50%, 50, 60%
oh,
on
let's go
year
buy
on.
him. I'm going to go buy him. We should turn this into a stock picking podcast. Well, I don't mean buy the whole company. I just mean buy the stock. Anyway, the point is,
No,
maybe
I
they're
get
right.
that, but I'm just saying like I mean,
Maybe they're right. So he could build his own CRM exactly the way he wanted it, the way his mind and his company's hive mind visualized managing customers, I guess.
self-design, like you said.
Self-design. Maybe so. Look, okay, well, here's an interesting question. Wha- Imagine a world where way back in good old 77 or whenever when Bill and Paul started Microsoft, imagine if we had AI back then and everybody could have just made their own software.
Right.
Like, are people going to write their own word processors? What if that was the thing that Bill and Paul had invented, which is everybody can just make their own software now? Well, we
What do you
even
think?
like, well, I
I
don't
mean, I
know,
think
but
the world would be radically different.
it'd be radically different. But maybe we wouldn't. The whole reason we're anchored in software, COTS software or SaaS software, is because the only way to make it at scale was to have it be the only way to make it cost efficiently was to make it at scale.
Yeah, that certainly is true.
And
I think that's a safe argument.
so maybe this rejection, at least that I'm having, of like, oh, this is crazy that people are going to build their own software for themselves. Actually, I'm just anchored in the economics of an olden time. And if we had started out that way, we would have never gotten to this situation.
I think that might be true. I mean, what's interesting is the thing that's powerful about self-design, if it is really just like I'm building it for myself, then the spec questions become a lot simpler.
Totally.
You
Way
know
simpler.
exactly what you know what you want. I want
Yeah,
exactly this.
I want this. You don't have to think about these unusual cases.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think there's plenty of little things that where it's like, I wish that hey, look, we gotta schedule a call with an interview, guest for the podcast, and it's like, man, like, how many different production level software packages are out there to try to get multiple people to agree on a time slot, right? So many, right? But they're all like designed for like one was originally designed because someone was trying to plan potlucks or something or like
Yeah,
who's
totally.
right? And so then it got morphed from potluck planner to, like calendar picker, and it's just like it's a hodgepodge mess where it's like, no, I just want a potluck picker, app. It's going to be super simple and it's from all my friends in Seattle. They're coming to the potluck and I don't need like I know exactly what I need it to do. Boom, custom bespoke, boom. My friends like click a thing and it's done.
I was just laughing about that because a while ago, I mean, a long while ago, some friends and I made a Zoom-like product, and it never got off the ground. I mean, when I say it never got off the ground, like we worked on it for 2 days. Like that's how far it got. But I was just chuckling because what happens if everyone just starts making their own video conferencing software?
Right. Well, that's a good example where you require yeah, that's a good example where it's like you require the ability to have the person use the software, you know. I mean, honestly, that's one of the reasons Zoom is so entrenched, right? It's like, fuck, I already installed Zoom. Like there was the great like migration away from what was it before Zoom? It was the big one. I can't even remember it anymore.
Skype?
Skype. Yeah, Skype was dominant before Zoom. Before that, wasn't it like Syntrex or something like that? There was
Oh,
like a one
Citrix? Yeah.
Citrix or
Or
something
it
like
was
that.
called Web. It's called Web something. I
Yeah,
don't know. What
that
was that
one.
thing called?
And those things basically like they were all predicated on don't make me install a new application just to do a
Hmm.
video phone call with you, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And so it's just like that matters, right? Standardization matters.
Can we go all the way back to the original question?
Yes, let's do it.
Because there was something that I didn't say earlier that I'm wondering about. Okay, so your original question was how do we get product owners to care about spec-driven development? And as we were discussing, one of the things I wrote down that I thought about was, and this is a little bit of a small business idea, not that big, I mean, not, is there a market out there to do training for product owners about how to use a tool like SpecKit? Like, should we be going and pitching to companies, you need to hire us to do a 2-day workshop with your product owners to teach them how to use this thing? Because in an AI world, it will give your company an advantage. And I understand there is a lot of that's it's easy to train oneself on this, right?
Hmm.
But sometimes you got to lead the horse to water.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering if it's both a need and an opportunity out there. And I want to say one little wrinkle before you answer that. I've said a few times having the product owner and the engineer and the designer sitting down next to each other doing spec kit. Some people say, well, why do we need the engineer anymore if the designer can
Right.
just do spec kit? Well, I think I used an example earlier in this call where someone was using SpecKit and the AI decided to use Bash instead of Python or whatever.
Right.
You need both sets of eyes reviewing the spec. That both people bring some expertise. One brings the expertise of this is our customer need. The other brings the expertise of this is how you build technology, good technology. These are the right tools for the job. We need
Yeah.
both, and maybe the designer. I don't know. I actually don't know how design fits in with SpecKit. To be perfectly honest with you. So I'm going to elide over that for a minute. But you need both sets of eyes to look at that spec.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm just wondering if, like, as an industry, we actually need to go out and proactively train people.
Well, first of all, I think your characterization of like you need somebody that understands how software is built correctly, and I think you know, Bash versus Python is a great example of like something that I wouldn't expect a product owner to be able to pick up on. So I think you're right about the idea of them there being important skills that AI development and SpecKit and spec-driven development does not um, obviate, right?
Hmm.
As far as training them as to why this would be useful to them,
Well, not even why. Here's how you use it,
here's how to use it. Well, I think
right?
that's the challenge, right? The challenge is that I feel like I'm not sure what the average product owner. I think that I'm a little worried that the reaction I've gotten from the product owners I've worked with will be that the reaction from the average product owner, which is, ugh, that's too much. That's too
Hmm,
much. Too many words.
interesting.
TLDR, too long, didn't read.
So we don't really want to do the work. Is what you're saying? We just want the engineers to take care of it for us. We thought just engineers took care of this hard part. We got to go do the fun part, just dream up of things.
Uh, that's on brand. That's on
I
brand
mean,
for many of the product owners I've worked with in my career. No offense, guys, but yeah, that's on brand for what I've heard from most of them.
I haven't really surveyed them, so I don't know. And I generally speaking, haven't had too many product owners I've worked with in the past that are just like you guys figured out.
Well, I mean, again, like I think that we've had a look. All the jobs are changing. Like you said it,
All the
right? Like
jobs
you
are
said it. All
changing.
the jobs are changing, and I think that like um, five. There's no doubt in my mind that 5 years ago, if I had brought a product owner in the room, an engineer in the room, a designer in the room, and I was to say, okay, who has the hardest job here, right?
Hmm.
Every single one of them would have raised their hand.
Hmm.
And you'd be like, okay, cool, product owner, like why is your job the hardest job? And their answer would basically be like, well, coming up with the ideas is the hard part,
Hmm.
right? And the developer would say, well, of course my job's the hardest job because like actually taking your idea and making it work, that's the hard part,
Hmm.
you know?
Hmm.
And the designer would say, well, I have the hardest job because making your idea actually something people can use
Hmm.
is the hard part.
Hmm.
I do think there's a little bit of a everyone wanted to think that the part that they thought was the most fun was the hard part,
Hmm.
and the other parts of the job were not the hard part. And that's why it was
Yeah.
okay that the other people were doing it.
Mm.
But I think that what we're really saying here is the reality is all three of those jobs matter and they have to be
Absolutely.
and so they're so if you basically compress all three of those jobs into one job, that's a really hard job.
An impossible job.
And SpecKit doesn't actually make it any easier. It just exposes how hard it is.
Okay, now this is interesting. So just maybe it was yesterday, I kind of had this idea in my mind for like it's just a version of SpecKit. It's nothing fancy, but imagine like a user interface that has like three panes. I'm not sure if this is the right user interface. We need a designer. But so what I was trying to do is create an IDE for spec-driven development. And I had in my mind, I had this picture in my mind that had three panes, think of it essentially as three text boxes, but it's three panes. It had the designer pane, the engineer pane, and the product owner pane, right? And so that in my mind, it was a little asynchronous, like the product owner could go do their part and it might send then the engineer could go put in some, and like, everybody could sort of do parts asynchronously. And there might even be sort of messages going back and forth between these different. I guess each pane is essentially just a chat, a GPT chat kind of thing, right? So like so that it was a tool for this, like really brought this collaboration into one window of like we all have to do a part of this to come out with ultimately the main
Yeah.
or the single spec that we then give to the robot because all three parts are important. Man, you've really flummoxed me today on this one.
I
Lots of
look,
times we talk about stuff and I feel like, oh, I know the answer to this. But today,
I think that it's a wild world out there, Scott. It's getting wild. It's getting wilder by the minute. And I think that a lot of, as the kids say, a lot of work was being done by the structure that we have grown up in the last couple decades.
Mhm.
And that the work was hiding the complexity of really knowing how to build software.
Mhm.
And, the fact that writing code took time, a lot of time, and that
Hmm.
time has now evaporated,
Hmm.
has exposed the fact that the other parts of the disciplines
Hmm.
need to catch up. And it's hard.
Is it that they need to catch up, or it's like just putting stress on a different part of the system?
Okay, fine. Yes, both. It's
I
putting a
mean,
stress. It put the stress used to be, right? Like the pressure used to be the writing of the code was the
hmm.
hardest part, was the most expensive part, was the
Hmm.
slowest part.
Hmm.
That's not the slowest part anymore
No,
by a long shot.
right. Now the slowest part is, well, it was the slowest part and the most valuable part. And that's why people are paid what they're paid. And now we're going to maybe see that shift.
Yeah. There you go.
Everything's a K shape.
Everything's a K-shape. Well, maybe the answer, by the way, to my original question, I'll just posit this is how do you get product owners to care about spec-driven development? Maybe the answer to that is because the AI is coming for their job too.
Oh, tell me, is that another episode, or tell me, give me a preview on that episode.
I mean, the fact that SpecKit already comes up with the user stories that the product owner didn't even think of and comes up with the gaps in the plan that will create ambiguity down the road, like on its first cut. That means like it's not far from coming up with those ambiguities and coming up with the best answers to those ambiguities. It already recommends the answers to the ambiguities.
Yes, but I would actually go one step further upstream. Recently, I was chatting with a former colleague and friend who has spent a lot of time working in the tech incubator world and in a variety of different aspects. And he was talking about how AI is changing everything and he wants to start a company and blah, 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 blah. And I said to him, I was like, well, how can we get AI to give us the ideas?
Oh yeah.
But the core nugget, like once you say like, hey, we're going to go into the business of making ballpoint pens, like then the user stories flow from that, and SpecKit can help us make the user stories better. But somebody had to have the observation in the first place, which is like these fountain pens are really messy.
Yeah.
And if
Well, didn't like I mean Pioneer Square Labs, right? And our friend
mhm,
Kevin, right? Like they did a bunch of work. They've done a bunch of work where they were just like idea generation and they had a
mhm,
pretty good formula for both idea generation as well as like idea market fit evaluation, is it a
they were doing that
practical
with AI.
I yeah they announced this like 6 months ago. They built a little website like just go in there and just like click a button and it comes up with a bunch of ideas and then does a market fit analysis and things like
Oh
that. So
yeah, I vaguely remember that.
yeah, and I think I mean I think that's for sure coming, right? Like it's for sure the case that you can evaluate ideas pretty aggressively about like how big how big the market is, the TAM, how big the TAM is,
Mhm.
what the likely price sensitivity will be. That stuff's I think is how do I say it? Like formalizable, it's
Yep, can be formalized. So then you have to go upstream one more level and say, okay, we've got all these ideas across all these different industries, all these different categories, it's all these different geographies. At some point, well, I have a hypothesis which might not be true, and I'll tell you the false state. At some point, there has to be a human insight to the world, something that we see about the world that is not visible to the computers
yeah.
that can help us see, oh, people need software to solve this problem. And if you want it to be a business, and they'll pay me money for that software. Okay.
Yeah.
That's fundamentally it. Now, that's my hypothesis, which is that has to be true. Otherwise, if it's not true, then the robots are taken over.
Some would say
Right.
that's going to be the outcome.
Right. So it's like it's getting all the way to that point, which is I know something about Seattle, or I know something about real estate agents, or I know something about baseball cap manufacturers that the world none of the rest of the world either understands or knows.
Right. Well, this is the argument that I made. This is the argument I made, and this is not a novel idea. Plenty of people are saying this, is that it's the entrepreneurs, people who are entrepreneurial, who have a unique insight into a particular target customer
Mhm.
because of their entrepreneurial founder market fit. They are the ones that will be able to use these technologies to essentially build, like there's the concept of the one person unicorn company, right? Like there's like that's there's a whole bunch of on Kalshi and Polymarket there's like current like over under on like when will the first single person unicorn billion-dollar company,
Hmm.
exist, right? And
Hmm.
so people are for sure calling that as a trend that they think is going to happen. And it's going to be someone someone to your point, who has this unique insight into the human condition and the desires of humans to spend money on something, on software, and then boom, having it built. And then the argument goes something like, and the second that that product is released, there will be a dozen copies of it. So it will be difficult to defend that.
So that product has to have a network effect.
Or some other meaningful moat that
Hmm.
protects its market share, right?
So what does this mean for guys like me? I'm not good at that. Okay. Let me tell you something. There have been a few times in my life where I've had an idea for something and I didn't follow my gut and I was
Hmm.
wrong and I was a fool
And
because
someone else made it.
100%.
So then you maybe were good at it, you just didn't follow through. Maybe that was because you didn't have the tooling necessary, but now you do.
Well, okay, I'm gonna toot my own horn for a second.
You invented LED light bulbs.
Spotify.
Yeah. I mean, who didn't
In
see that
about
coming?
1996 or so,
Yeah.
I just got my first broadband internet. I just got my first whatever it was back then, Napster or Limelight or another thing. I was getting music off the internet, right? Because like you, I was really into music. I was trading Grateful Dead tapes. I was doing all that stuff, right? And
Right.
like I got this thing and I'm getting music off the internet and I'm burning it to CDs, right? And I'm
Yep.
at I'm at a bar with some of my friends, with my friend Serena and her boyfriend Brett and another friend of ours, Ariel. And I'm like, guys, I don't think anybody's going to buy CDs anymore.
Right.
They're just going to get their music over the internet. They're
Right.
like, how are they going to listen to it? I'm like, well, they're either going to listen to it from their computer or they're going to like burn it to a CD and then they're going to listen to it in their
Right.
car.
Right.
And this was at a bar in Fremont, Seattle. That's not around anymore, Dad Watson's. And they talked me out of it. They were like, that's crazy. Nobody's going to do that. And I was like, I was trying to convince them, like, guys, I've been doing this. I've been downloading all this music. It's amazing. Like, you get everything what you want. It's all going to be like right here. This is how it's going to work. And they were like,
Hmm.
that's you are, what are you on? What are you smoking, Scott? And then I walked away from that. And we were just hanging out at the bar one night. And I was like, oh, maybe they're right. Maybe nobody will do this. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is I'm not really that guy who has the insight. I've always been the guy in my career where when somebody has an insight, I've been like, oh, I know how we could make that. Like I know how to do the engineering. I know how to build that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Gosh darn it. Are we all effed? Are all the builders effed?
I mean, I don't know. I don't want to say that, but I'm saying like I'm saying the entrepreneurs. Yeah, I'm
Are
saying
not
like
effed. The
entrepreneurs.
entrepreneurs are not effed.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean like the idea of streaming was something that obviously that's like near and dear to my heart. That's why I was working at,
Yeah,
Real
real
Networks in
networks.
1994 and we built that and it was very, very expensive to build what we built. And eventually, and I would argue that we're kind of like, I mean, did fine, right? And built a cool product and helped lay the foundation for stuff. But it was early. We had to build a lot of stuff that now is just like we had to build stuff that like is just doesn't matter anymore because the technology of the internet has changed. And
You invented
YouTube,
it.
well,
What were you going to say about YouTube?
I was just gonna say, like, YouTube, Real Networks had a secret project that they were working on that was effectively YouTube,
Mm.
about 5 years before YouTube. But the hard part was that at the time, Real Networks was already pretty well established with media companies. They were already doing licensing with media companies. And the thing that made YouTube take off, of course, was the fact that users uploaded
Hmm.
copyrighted material, right? And
Hmm.
and so, that was a challenging time for Real Networks because we knew we had the idea. We're like, people definitely are going to want to do this. Like, this is something
Hmm.
that people are going to want to do, but we couldn't bring ourselves to do it because we had business relationships with all the media companies, we were selling digital rights management software to them and things like that. So it was like we know that like we couldn't be the rogue actor that was going to disrupt things
Mm-hmm.
because of our
Mm-hmm.
existing business relationships, right?
Mm-hmm. You
You know,
invented YouTube, man. That's awesome.
yeah, but we did not really because it was like 5 years later and somebody that wasn't as encumbered as us did it. But we knew we could see it. We could see clearly people wanted that, you know.
Yeah.
And so I guess to finish this out, to go back to the original, right? I think that the core issue here is that knowing what you want, having a vague idea of what you want, was never sufficient to build a business.
Mm-hmm.
And if you were better at describing what you want, or you had people like you and I that were really good builders that were able to kind of riff off of what you said vaguely and build something quickly that you then could criticize, like that's been the way of the world for the last 20 years plus.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That way of doing things is not going to work anymore because it's even faster to build things. It's no longer a moat to have built something. And so it's all going to come down to, are you actually good at describing the problem that you really want? And is the problem you want to build actually a useful problem? So maybe the answer to the question of how many CTOs does it take to get product owners to care about SpecKit is it's however many it takes to convince the product owners that getting their definition correct is the most important thing for them to keep being able to compete with their competitors, with upstarts, and, you know, the AI that will come after their job too.
It's wild, man. I don't even know what to say. It's wild. Okay. What do we say for the 4 people who listened all the way to the end of this episode? Because we've been talking for like 90 minutes. What do we say, Brad?
We say smash that subscribe button, rate and review.
Thank you for listening. We appreciate you. And don't hesitate to leave us a comment or shoot us a note if you want.
Yeah. All right. Next week, we'll talk to you again soon, Scott.
Adios, Brad.
Adios. This episode of the How Many CTOs Does It Take podcast was produced and edited by Saffron Hefta-Gaub. Our theme song was AI generated by Brad. Please follow us on all the social media platforms at How Many CTOs Pod. You can find us on YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Threads, X, TikTok, and Patreon, or at our website at howmanyctospod.com. And remember to rate, review, and subscribe on the podcast platform of your choice. Thanks for listening.